Dear Shira, Shira Geffen and Etgar Keret, Shalom. It's always a pleasure to have you in Mexico, in any form or way, to talk with a very creative couple here at La Feria Internacional de Guadalajara. Each of you have a very interesting artistic career. Shira Geffen is an actress, dancer, writer, film director, and author of books for children. Etgar Keret dwells in a sort of parallel universe. Etgar is known for his short stories, graphic novels, and script writing for film and television. Bienvenidos.
Glad to meet you. Of course, we would have preferred to be in Mexico, but after we beat the virus, we will come and visit again.
You know, it's very interesting to see how the magic that you developed on your own and together has started. Please talk about this. How do you put your attention in children, and how do you work together?
So I wanted to say that basically for me, writing for children and writing for adults it isn't fundamentally different, because I mean, when I write something for children, I may use a different vocabulary, or maybe I'll make sure not to rely on prior knowledge. But I think that a dialogue with an intelligent person is basically the same dialogue, even if he's very, very short, and even if he's only 5 years old. I really don't think that you need to develop a tone through which you communicate with children. When I was a child, the thing I hated the most was when grown-ups would come to me and say, "Hey, little boy, how are you doing?" And I would ask myself, why do they speak in a different way to my parents, and they talk to me as if I was stupid or, I don't know, a parrot? Why don't they respect me and have an eye-to-eye dialogue? So for me, writing for children and writing for adults is not that different, but working with Shira and doing things on my own, it's a world of difference, because when you have a collaborator like Shira, both in life and in writing, then you really can do things that you wouldn't have a chance to achieve on your own, because each of us brings to the stories that we collaborate on a different point of view, a different emphasis, and sometimes a different sensibility. And when we collaborate, I really feel that the same goes for our life experience, not only for art. I really feel that we're able to do things together and see things together that would be impossible for us to do on our own. Our first collaboration for children book was a Moonless Night, and we had this collaboration just after learning that Shira was pregnant with Lev, our son, and we thought to ourselves, we're gonna have a child, and maybe it will be difficult for us. We will fight all the time. I will say, I want him to go to the woods and hunt, and Shira will say, no, I want him to learn how to glide, and maybe we will not agree about anything. So we thought that if we will write a children's book together, it will be a good way for us to learn to compromise and collaborate and work together as a team. And it's funny enough that we wrote this book during Shira's pregnancy, and it was published just when Lev was born. So for us, our first collaboration on a children's book was really parallel to our first collaboration on having a child.
Wow. And Shira, how it is with you, this writing for children and collaboration with Etgar? Let's say also that it's very interesting that Shira received the first prize of Children's Theater Festival from Haifa back in 1998. So that means that you had
She's an
interested.
old woman. She's a very old woman.
Yes, Shira.
So for me, to write for children, it's I didn't choose it. I didn't choose it. I just, it was for me the natural thing to do. And when I write for children, I'm not thinking about a child that I writing for him or audience. I thinking about myself, because for me the writing for children is a kind of bridge to myself, because I cannot remember, I doesn't remember myself as a child, and it's very, it's very far away, and it's very amorphic. And when I write, I kind of go back to this child that inside myself, that I cannot hear most of the time or see, and this is like the way of writing. I can reach her, and I can understand her, and I can see her. So for me, this is I think the cause that I write for. And like Etgar said, us, it's very, because I think what make our collaboration good, that Etgar, I think because he's a man and because he's very good in narratives, he go like straight forward, and he want to know step by step what's happened. And I think because I'm a woman and a little bit, I'm very childish, I go to the side, I want to see what's happen near me. I like to collect things that not unnecessary. You need, but somehow the mix between us make good things, like make think wall things. Wall the creation. It's more rich, I think.
And I think that Shira has a sensibility of a poet, that it means that she's very much in the moment. She describes her feelings, and she's curious about something. And I think that I'm very much like a prose writer, in that sense that whenever I'm in a situation, I ask myself, how did I get here? And how the hell will I escape from here? So I'm always in transition. And for me, it's very helpful to be with Shira, that she helps me also experience the moment, and not only the task or the arc. And for Shira, maybe it's helpful that thanks to me, she gets somewhere and not is not lost forever in her experiences.
Yes, you were going to comment something, Shira.
No, about this, no, I think I said it perfectly. Yes, I think sometimes I feel like a metaphor, that a lot of things that I do alone. Etgar helped me because he kind of pushed me, because I can be stuck in my long time, and it's like you stand on the edge of jump, and in the pool when you want to jump. And I can stand there, for a year, and then Etgar just comes and push me, and I'm very angry at the first, but after I thank him, because I need it sometimes. That someone push me, he will push me.
In Mexico, Shira has two books translated into Spanish. One titled Buenas noches, monstruo, Laila Tov mi fletzet, and La hoja dorada. Etgar also has two books, Romper el cerdito, Breaking the pig, and Papá escapó del circo. In these books, it is clear that you go beyond the mellow stereotypes of what is a child. How do you explore childhood without prejudices? Is there any parent's resistance to that drive in your books?
Well, I can say that with me, it has to do a lot with my parents. My parents were both Holocaust survivors, and my mother was orphaned in a very young age. So basically, she never experienced a proper parenting through her childhood. And when she would communicate with me and my siblings, she would always communicate with us as if we were adults. And at the same time, I think that being a Holocaust survivor and passing the Holocaust as a child, she herself was a little bit like a child. So this kind of differentiation between communicating with children or communicating with adults was all the time mixed up, because she would address us with the same respect and responsibility you addressed a grown-up, and at the same time could be very childish herself. And I think that my first book, Dad Runs Away with the Circus, is a little bit a book about that, about this idea that when we have a relationship with our parents don't necessarily take the role of a parent. They still have a child in them, and sometimes this child is very dominant. And when we are children, we don't always take the role of a children, because sometimes we see that our parents need us or people around us need us, and then we need to act like grown-ups. So I really think that this mixture is something that also exists when I write for adults. I think that, the book Breaking the Pig is based on a story I wrote for adults. But the differentiation between adult children, it's really all the time gets mixed up in my mind. The only thing that is very common in many of my children books, also in a long-haired cat boy cub that also came out in Mexico, is that it could do a lot about exploring the relationship between parents and children, in that sense of both seeing how marvelous it is and also how dangerous it can be when you are in a relationship with somebody that is not a complete other. Because a parent and a child, each of them is a part of the other. They share DNA, they share genetics, they share the same room, they share the same home. So even if it's totally not symmetrical, they are this kind of like a two-headed monster. Maybe one head is smaller than the other. And for me, trying to articulate something about my feeling about this complex and unique feeling of both being a parent to a child and being a child to a parent is something that I find myself very often attracted to when I write children books.
And in your case, Shira?
I write just children books, but I do the films I made. It's for adult films, the Jellyfish, which Etgar and me co-direct, and the Self-Made. I think in my case, it's a kind of processing. My writing is a processing thing that happened to me when I was in the past. And each piece, it tells something about. I'm very much in delay with my life, because I understand just after I write. Like if when in my children book, I understand my childhood. In my last film, Self-Made, I understand my motherhood. Not understand, but research my motherhood. So for me, it's a tool again to understand myself, and the most easy for me it's through girl eyes and not adult, because I think when I was girl, there is something very clean, pure, and I didn't become what I am now, that I in front of a lot of things that doesn't connect to myself, to my real me. I hope it's you can understand me,
but I feel very much like Shira, because what I think is that there is something about the child point of view that basically the entire process of growing up is being indoctrinated by society telling us
Exactly.
what we should do and what we shouldn't do. And when you're a child, you still have this vantage point that, it's a little bit, I would say, if life is driving inside a car, then when you're a child, you're outside of the car. You didn't enter it yet. So you can see the scratches on the door. You can see the pigeon crap on the ceiling. You can notice all those things that the moment you'll be in the car, you won't be able to notice them again. And that really gives the children the ability, let's say, to criticize things from a pure place, from a place that is totally not antagonistic. Basically, from the idea that you see something with fresh eyes and you offer an option that could be different from the option of others. There is a poem written by a Dutch poet. I can't remember her name right now. It's very beautiful. It's about a father and a child going every day to school. And it's like the kid is in the first grade. And every time they pass the corner, he sees a beggar in the corner. And the child describes the beggar. And he says, everybody is in a hurry, everybody is stressed, and only he is relaxed, sitting in the best corner where the sun is straight on his face. And the people who give him money, they bow in front of him as if he's a king. And the people who don't give his money, you can feel their shame as they pass next to him. And the kid says, when I grow up, I also want to be a beggar. And I think that what's beautiful in this poem is that when you are grown up, you accept the hierarchies of society. You take, the word I hate the most in English, which is an American word, is the word loser. Americans like to say, this guy is a loser. And the moment that you say about somebody that is a loser, it means that it's like life is like an athletic competition. You have somebody who did it better. This one gets a better grade than the other. While life is totally an existential experience. We're being born and then we die and we do something that is totally redundant in the middle. So I think that in a poem like this, you can see how a child can perceive something and reveal it to the people next to him. Maybe, if a child shares with you his point of view, you can say to yourself, oh, I'm on automatic pilot. I don't really see reality around me. I'm just doing what I've been taught to do, like some kind of dogs that have a Pavlovian reflex.
Yes, and this has to do with the stereotype we have about children's gaze. Yes, and this brings into play, how do you understand childhood vulnerabilities, but also its possibilities?
Well, I think that we have this kind of tendency when we grow up to idealize childhood, to say,
Exactly.
oh, children are so lucky. But it's like the first thing our son told me when we went to school. I think he was in the first grade. He said, "Dad, this looks very much like a jail." And the idea was that there were fences, there was a guard outside, there were people telling the children, go here, go there, in a very, very authoritative voice. There was some kind of a lack of freedom. And, and I think that from a time where you have no cares, no responsibility, while my personal experience as a child, I remember it, was this idea that I don't control my fate, that there are all kinds of people around me that sometimes don't want to listen to me. They take decisions for me. They will tell me if I will play the piano. They will tell me if I can have ice cream. And I don't really have a say about it. So I really, really think that being a child you are in a very, very complex position. In Vietnam, in the Vietnam War, the Americans had this graffiti born, never asked. Nobody ever asks you if you want to be born. So when you're a child, in a sense, it's like, you are being thrown into this big hole that is life. But it's not as if like, the light is still blinding you. You see like orientation, and you are in this kind of a place that is very, very overwhelming emotionally. So I think that, when I think about my childhood, my happy moments and my sad moments, there was something very total about it. If I had an ice cream and it fell to the ground, it was as if like the entire earth was destroyed. If my kindergarten teacher told me you were a good boy, I was happier than if I get the Nobel Prize for literature. There is something that fills you up and overflows in childhood that is neither good or bad. It's just like life on very, very high volume.
This means also that there is a critical eye in the children that we also have to see. Bashevi Singer has said that writing for children is a great test for the skills of the writers, because when they read a book or see a play that is boring, they yawn openly without any shame or fear of authority. They don't read the New York Times review of books to guide their reading pleasure. What do you especially love about this critical children's gaze?
I love it because they're very honest and they never lie. And when I did this play that you talk about in the Haifa Festival,
Yes.
I remember really good that after the one show, a mother came with her child and she said to him, tell her. She was really annoying. And then he comes to me and say to him, I didn't like it. and this mother wanted to die. And and I felt so good that he didn't lie for her mother, and he told me the truth, and he stand for himself. And another thing that I always I like to see in my show, or the children fell to sleep in my show when it's happened, because I think the show make them very calm, and they feel so good that they fell asleep and they dream now, nice dream, and my show is in their dream. So I think that I love this very direct attitude of children, and I think it's one of the things that make me stay in this area.
And I think that what I like about doing things for children is that because it's such a total experience, because they're so overwhelmed by it, that when they like what you do, it's really, really powerful. Because you meet a child, children read a children book 100 times. When I work on a children book, I always remember my experience as a child. I hardly had any children book, but if I would have one, I would inspect every illustration in it. I would read every little details in it, and it would be kind of part of my life. I would learn it like an ultra-Orthodox Jew studies the Bible,
Oh.
and you will never get this kind of commitment from an adult. When you feel that when you write a children book, then it basically it's like the child is trying to climb up this kind of a steep rock of life, and sometimes you grab to a book and you just hold to it because it helps you make another step. It helps you not fall. I remember as a child being exposed to xenophobic and feelings and racism through Huckleberry Finn, or being exposed to Buddhist thinking through Winnie the Pooh, or being exposed to mathematical logics through Alice in Wonderland. All those experiences there was something total in them, the kind of feeling that Columbus had when he discovered America. It's not like that today, I don't know, I eat in a good restaurant, an Italian restaurant, and then I see another and I say, oh, this one is even better. It's basically discovering that there is pasta in the world, discovering that there is such thing called ice cream. So each new book gives you this kind of the potential of discovering something that you didn't see before. And like Shira, when children come and say, oh, I didn't like your book, the book is boring, I totally accept it, because I don't like all the books, I prefer people telling me the truth. But the idea that you sometimes meet a child that can recite your book by heart, I never met an adult who could recite a book of mine by heart, but Shira and me met more than one child that could recite Moonless Night,
Wow.
or our latest book, Mechakim Lenisim, that they could just recite it from beginning to end, and this feeling that it's almost like, it's the warmest hug that an artist could get.
Oh, that's wonderful. And let's have a taste of your book, A Moonless Night, Laila Blillareach, translated in Spanish as Noche sin Luna, in a 1-minute animated capsule of the TV series Imaginantes, Imagineers, so you can comment on that. Adelante con el video, por favor.
Esta es una pausa para imaginar juntos. A una niña se le perdió la luna. En la noche solo se veían nubes con formas de elefantes tristes. Luna, lunita, ¿dónde estás? De pronto se emocionó al ver algo que brillaba, pero solo era un gato barrigón. La niña siguió buscando a la luna. En una cabaña un hombre calvo le dijo que él no la tenía y le cerró la puerta. Entonces la niña subió por una escalera que llegaba al cielo. Desde ahí vio por la ventana de la cabaña que la luna bailaba sobre una mesa. La niña bajó y reclamó: el cielo está oscuro por tu culpa, a todos nos da miedo. El hombre le dijo que solo quería jugar. La luna se fue a ocupar su sitio junto a las estrellas, pero prometió que cada mes regresaría a bailar. Los escritores Shira, Geffen y Etgar Keret nos dicen que cuando en una noche estemos tristes porque no hay luna, no olvidemos que en algún lugar, en medio del bosque, hay un hombre que es feliz bailando con ella.
This was your first book together.
Yeah.
Yes. I think, we had the two collaborations simultaneously. We worked on this book and on our movie Jellyfish. And it's funny because Shira and me, we lived together 10 years before that. But only when we wanted to become parents, we realized that, when you don't have children, each can live his independent life. And, we come back home, we tell each other, but we really don't need to share anything. And the moment we knew that we're going to share a child, we had this need to share more things, not just this child, but our ideas and our thoughts and our emotion, and to have something that will belong to both of us and not only to one of us.
Yes, and the children recite this by heart. This is incredible that they know this story by heart. What do you find in this story that touches so much the children imagination?
I think that what the story that I liked when I was a child, it's this stories about that the hero go alone in the forest, go alone from his home, and like do the thing is total alone, and he play people, and but his family is not around, and he find it alone because I think it's like inner journey. And I think in this story it's the same. And I think the fact that we wrote it in rhythm,
Rhyme.
in rhyme. I'm sorry, for English, in a rhyme. So it's a little bit like music. And for children, if you are very, very little, like a 2-year-old or 3-year-old, and you don't understand the meaning, the music is very, very important. And you first, before you understand what's happening in the book, you listen to the music. And then, so I think in this like this, you can like build the story in your mind. First the music, then the painting. That's beautiful. David Polonsky painted this book, and then the meaning. And I think it's a very deeper experience for readers. And what you can add?
I think that, you know, the way that we wrote this book was a little bit like a theatrical improvisation. And what happened was that Shira was very much like Zohar, the girl going in the forest. And I was more the characters that she meets. The cat, the strange man, you know. And I feel that there is something very spontaneous in the dialogue, that you really, really feel that it's almost two different minds meeting together, which makes it kind of special, because usually the books that we read, even if they have many characters, they all come totally from the same mind. I feel that there is something in this process, and by the way, this is why we wanted it to rhyme, because it's much easier to collaborate when you write something that rhymes, because you don't have infinite options for the next sentence. You can only choose the ones that rhyme. So, for example, if Zohar asks a question, I have to answer an answer as the cat that will rhyme with the question. If the cat says something insulting to Zohar, Zohar has to protect herself, but Shira is only to sentences that very much, I think, polyphonic and game-like. And maybe there is something about this kind of forms that appeals to children.
You know, for writing this book, you had one soul. The word lev in Hebrew means soul, that bind you together. Your son, whose name is Lev, now he's an adolescent. But what have you learned from your child teacher regarding your stories?
First, I want to say that a lot of time that we said to Lev, come here, there is a new story that you wrote. He said, I don't want to hear. And I respect it very much, because my father is a children writer. And when I was a child, it's a very big and very good one. And when I was a child, I'm all the time like I born into his poems and books, and I try to be very careful not to involve him in our creation and my mind creation. So I think in these terms, I try not to involve him. But I think again, I think maybe Etgar think different, but for me, I think that I didn't write. I didn't start to write different after Lev born, because again, I write about about me, and Lev can be the audience and to give inputs after we show him things. He's very embarrassed because we are his parents, but in the heart of the thing, for me, I write about myself.
Well, I want to say that for me it's strange, because if I discuss two books that were published in Mexico, That Runs Away with the Circus and Long-Haired Catboy Cub. Then
yes,
the first one was written before Lev was born. I did it with Rutu Modan, the illustrator, and she became a mother, and I wrote the most kind of for, you know, and I wrote it very much experiencing the child in myself. But when I wrote a long-haired catboy cub, I was already a parent. And I think that I wrote this book a lot from the feeling of me failing as a parent. Not failing like being a horrible parent, but understanding that I'm not as good as I want to be. Because, for example, when you're with your child, many times, I don't know, I have an important phone call, or I need to text somebody or check an email. And when you have a young child and you're playing a game and he's a pirate and you're a shark, and then, as the pirate is going to attack the shark, I say, come on, stop. Yes. Hi, Pepe. Yeah, I'll get to the Zoom in 5 minutes, which kind of destroys the entire game. And I felt very much through him how the adult life is fighting to destroy the child's imagination. And I think that if the first book was a tour de force of a child, then the second one was some kind of an apologetic confession of a parent. It was still written from a child point of view, but the father in the story was no longer my father. The father in the story was me.
How some stories that you write are related with your real life experiences with your son, like, for example, pastrami sandwich.
Yes. Well, I want to say that I've learned, and I'm still learning a lot from our son, because
and your son. Yeah.
So because I think that again, there are all kinds of interactions in life. The interaction between somebody who's your superior. Sometimes I talk to my boss in university, and he says, "Etgar, don't do that." And maybe a interaction with somebody who's under you in hierarchy. Sometimes I ask my students to do homework and they don't want to. You have a interaction with your peers. Sometimes I talk to other professors in the university, but none of this is like the dialogues that you have with your child. There is something about it that it's almost like a capsule that is not totally connected to the world. I feel that that when our son and me we walked to school, which is something that we did since he was in kindergarten, and we still do it now when he's 16. Then there is something about those conversations that usually they have no pragmatic side. We're not to make money. We're not trying to word. So there are totally like Immanuel Kant's ideas, of morality. You have nothing to gain and nothing to lose from them. They have they're usually not really strongly connected to the present. They are just this kind of ability to kind of put our two foreheads together, put our heads one next to each other, and have this one kind of a symbiotic mind that could be conflicted sometimes because we could argue, and could be harmonic in others because we totally agree about things. But it's almost, for me, it's like moving to another dimension. I can tell you, like, I think in my life I had many adventures. I traveled to, I would say, probably my books were translated in more than 50 countries. I probably was in most of them. I written, directed, acted, was on theater stage, did many things. I think that none of the adventures that I had the magnitude and the power of parenthood. Because this parenthood, or my relationship with our child, is something that is basically fundamentally different. If I would not make movies, then I think I would still be the same person. If I wouldn't write books, I would also be the same person. I would be much sadder, and maybe more grumpy, but I think I would be the same person. But the person I am now and the person I was before our child was born, I feel that there is something that is fundamentally different in them. That my ability to be reflexive, to see my vices, to criticize myself, it was almost necessary to have this person who's both me and not me, for me to be able to see myself through his eyes, to see my faults, to appreciate my powers. I couldn't have reached all those conclusions in any other way.
So that's why it's so important to write about this relationship that we have with children, because they change our life. Your most recent book, Waiting for Nisim, Mehakim LeNisim, has to do with a character called Lev. Let's talk about it and about its transit from a book for children to the stage, to the world of music and dance. What's the story behind this story, and also about the collaboration with Tom Cohen and the choreographer Miri Lazar?
The story is about, it starts from Lev when he was young. There was this neighbor who lived in front of us, and there was friends, and Lev, they always, maybe you say, because my English is a little bit...
what happens, they would shout to each other from the window, "Let's meet downstairs." And Lev is very, very excited and quick, so he would run downstairs and wait. And the other child was a little bit slower and a little bit more kind of absent-minded, so it would take him sometimes a lot of time until he came down to the street. And we would watch Lev from the window, and sometimes he would only wait 10 minutes. But when you look at him, it looked as if he waited a lifetime. Because when you live in the present, then your perception is not, oh, I've been waiting for 20 minutes. It's, I've been waiting for this entire second, and now for this entire new second, and now for this entire third second. And we would see him and the metamorphosis that he would go to until that other child would go down the 4 floors and meet him. And there was something that it was both kind of moving to, when you like to say, oh, it's so endearing, but it also echoed something in ourselves, because I think that both Shira and me, in different ways, we are both very impatient people. I mean, not impatient in this that we're grumpy or anything, but that when we want something, we want it to be now, you know? So if Shira wrote a script for a TV series, I wrote a script for a TV series, now we are looking for funding, then every second that we cannot be on a set, we cannot direct the actors, we cannot rewrite the dialogue, it feels like a lifetime. So it's very, I think, interesting how with a relationship with a child, you see something that is very childlike, but through this, you're able to name something that was inside you and that maybe you didn't notice or you weren't aware of before.
And this story also came to stage. It has been translated into music and dance. Let's talk about this process, because it's wonderful to see the various ways in which a story can manifest itself.
I think what's good in this story, that it's a little bit like comics. The book, you know, in the first pages are without a word at all. Well, without text at all. It's just, you know, a paint of this neighborhood. Nothing happened. Just Lev waits and little thing change. And I think because this book is very with a little text, it's you have a plenty of place to imagine and to do a lot of things in this waiting time. And I think Tom, after he read that, he really liked the story, and he said to us, we can do beautiful thing, and let's go for it. And of course, that I stand on the jump and said I don't want and don't want. And Etgar was very curious to see what can we do with this. And I'm very happy that it became I don't know, a musical show, because it was a great experience. And yeah.
So I can say something about collaborations, that I did things with dancers and with musicians and with actors, and for me the first thing that I ask myself is, do I want to work with this guy? Not what is he doing, but do I want to work with him? And we met Tom in very special circumstances, because we were shooting our TV series L'Agent Immobilier, The Middleman, and we were shooting it in Brussels. And Tom is based in Brussels. So whenever we would have a free time in the weekend, because he's also Israeli, he speaks Hebrew, he's a father to a child, then it seemed very natural that we would meet together and go and eat pizza. And whenever we would go there would be something about the dialogues that Tom had with Lev, our son, that was very endearing, very special. There was something about the way that he spoke to him, that we also saw how Lev was captivated by him. And when Tom came to us and he said, I'm reading this book to my child, and every night I say to him, I want to read another book. And he says, no, mechakim lenissim, I don't want another book, I want this. And my son likes it so much and I want to do something. So immediately I said to Tom, everything you ask us, we'll do. And then Tom asked us to act in it. So that will be Lev and his friend. And the truth is, I never performed on a theater stage. I never danced in my life, stage or on stage. I never played the music, but my belief in Tom was so great that I said, okay, we'll do everything. And I found myself, really dancing and playing a kazoo and acting and playing a 10-year-old boy when I'm not a child, just because I said, okay, I'm going with this guy wherever he goes to. And in hindsight, I realized that, there was something a little bit dangerous in this, because I'm not an actor. Shira is an actress, but I'm not an actor. And this could have been embarrassing. But I think that for me, when it comes to art, I'm much more brave than I am in real life. Because I think, Karl Popper once said about science that the idea about scientific theories, that instead of us checking something and dying, we send our hypothesis, and the hypothesis, they die for us. We are not risking ourselves, we're just risking our theories. And I feel the same for art, that many things that would be risky in real life, not because I get killed, but because I will offend other people, I will damage their life unintentionally. When I get on stage or when I write a book, I know that the worst things that could happen would be that people will get bored, or live in the middle. So it kind of gives me the courage to do things that I'm not don't necessarily have the talent to do. But I say, worst will come to worst, Shira, me and Tom and Miri, we had an adventure and we did something that was strange and bad. That's also okay.
And in some way, you also were waiting for miracles, because nisim in Hebrew is miracles. Waiting for nisim, it's what you're also doing. Waiting for nisim to be brave in theater, in art, in ways in which normally we cannot be so brave. So finally, I would like to ask you about something that is very important, I think, for you. The writer Bruno Schulz has said that we need to mature towards infancy and childhood. In the case of Etgar's father, that seemed to be the case. how can we stimulate this possibility of maturing towards childhood and have the fresh eyes again to see the world and wait for nisim, wait for miracles?
It's I think is that what I learned that to be able to see the world through child's eyes, it's very helpful to have a child around, because I think that if I have to have a dialogue with an abstract idea, if I want to say to myself, I want to be more imaginative, I wouldn't know how to do it. But if there is a child saying, we are in the middle of the ocean and I'm throwing an harpoon at you, then I would say, oh, and I have a shield, so I blocked with my shield your harpoon, and there is something about this kind of a ping pong or this dialogue of a openness and imaginative thinking and feelings or acting in a way that is not necessarily rational or pragmatic, that it's always good to do it with a partner. So I think that, I could find a child in me also speaking to certain kind of adults. Shira, who has a very strong and dominant, always present. But the easiest way to do it is basically if you communicate with children and you don't force the rules of the dialogue. Because I think that many times when you're a grown-up speaking to a child, you say, okay, I speak to you, but we have to follow my rules. So we will only speak for 30 minutes because then we have to take the train. We will not say things that are lies. We will do this, we will do that. The moment that you do that, you force those rules, you cannot be a total child. But if you say, okay, I go with my child and we have to take the bus, but you know what? We can take the other bus. And you know what? Maybe will be late, but you know what? It's okay to be late. And maybe I have a phone call, but I don't have to answer it. So if we are able to make this choice to say, for now, for the next 2 or 3 hours, what's important is our capsule, our two people, a man and a child in a capsule, then it's easier to experience the child than if we say, I'm living all the time inside this adult pragmatic world, and the child is only a guest in it.
And Etgar, your father had that gaze. Your father had that children's amusement, even though he was an adult.
Yeah, I think that for both of my parents, the war kind of disturbed the process of moving from a child to an adult, because you live as a child or even a youth in an environment where you really cannot trust the adults around you, because you're in a war. You see that mostly what grown-ups do are killing each other. You experience all this violence and you rely mostly on yourself. So this idea of kind of making the rules for yourself is something that is very childlike. And I think that my father always kept it, because, for example, my father, after surviving the Holocaust, he said, I was giving the gift of life, so I don't want to live only one life. I want to live many lives. So he made himself this rule that every 7 years he will change his profession. And this is something that adults usually don't do. It's something that sounds very like a child's idea. But he lived with that, even though sometimes he had a job that he was very good at and he earned a lot of money. He would still, after 7 years, move to another job that he could have been bad at and make bad money, just to keep this kind of a curious movement of learning something new about the world every time.
Shira, your last thought on this amusement and this curiosity that you find in children, but also you find in yourself, because you were talking that you find this child in yourself, in your experience, while writing also.
Yes, I think to connect what you said before, as I think we live in a world that it's very, very hard to stay child. If we all the time want to achieve things, we have this, goal, and we have this purpose all the time. So, and we run all the time, and we don't have the time, to stop for a minute, to look on a flower, to look on a bird. So I think the child point of view is there in this, to stop for a minute and to live the moment. I know it sounds cliche, but my parents are children too. My father was a writer, as my mother too. They both infantile. It's nice, but it's hard too. And when you're born in a family like this, you're born with a role. You have a role. You need to be the adult. You need to be, to keep the family. And I think it was very heavy on my shoulder. And I think I have now the opportunity to go to this child that I was, but I wasn't, and to be child, So I think I can suggest to all of the people to go back to forget the role of the life, and the role and the what we must do and what we must achieve, and how we want that the world will look at us, and just to live the moment and to be now.
I know that I think, what I think is that one of the, Shira talked about the cliches. So one of the biggest cliche is people talking about the laughter of a child. People say, oh, the laughter of a child is some kind of a romantic idea. But I think that really what's so captivating in the laughter of a child, that when I hear a child laugh, I'm immediately jealous, because he allows himself to laugh in a way that I cannot laugh. To be 100% in his joy, in his humor. And I think that Shira is totally correct that, especially for children that had to assume responsibility like Shira, that the ability to return to your childhood, it kind of gives you this ability to laugh like a child, cry like a child, be surprised as a child. And when you talk about that, it's really about this kind of totality and force that your emotions have when you allow them to be played out and exist.
Shira, Geffen, Etgar, Keret, really thank you very much for sharing your parallel universes, your generous creativity, friendship, and imagination. A pleasure to have you here in Guadalajara in virtual manner. We hope to meet you with an abrazo very, very soon. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
Inshallah, really soon. I miss you, Pepe.